1987. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on the changing landscape inside the college admission and financial aid process. As you know, we are committed to keeping our alumni, friends, and benefactors informed what's happening at the college by partnering with our faculty, our centers, our institutes, and other departments on campus through our offering of webinars and podcasts and other opportunities to stay connected. I hope we think the programming we offered in the last 7 months has been informative and entertaining, but also allows you to feel connected to the Hilltop, even when we can't be together in person. And I think we're all looking forward to that day when we can be together on the Hilltop. On behalf of the Alumni Relations team, I want to thank all the people who have offered their expertise and time and led a seminar or podcast, and offered also suggestions for future podcasts and webinars. And I would encourage you to send your suggestions to the Office of Alumni Relations. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the college's website for those who couldn't make it live today. Our panel will speak for about 25 minutes and we'll take questions. There's a Q&A button on your screen, so please feel free to submit questions there. Today we are discussing the challenging landscape inside the process of higher ed admission and financial aid. And joining us today are members of the St. Anselm College admission and financial aid teams. I'll turn it over to our distinguished panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll begin our presentation.
Thank you, Father Bennett. Good afternoon, I guess, everyone. My name is Michael Iorio. I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment and Director of Admission at St. Anselm. I too am a proud graduate of the class of 2007, and I have been working at the college for about 13 years and oversee basically the admission division and the work done within the admission office. So thanks for joining us today. I'll turn it over to Cassie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cassie McHugh. I'm an Associate Director of Admission here at St. A's. I'm also an alumni. I graduated in 2008, and I'm just starting my 4th year here at St. A's, but I've been working in higher ed for roughly 12 years. And I will pass it on to my lovely colleague, Julie.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Cassie. My name is Julie Landman. I am the Director of Admission Recruitment here at St. Anselm College. I'm going into my 5th year here on the Hilltop. And prior to that, I spent about 8 years at a school down in the Boston area. So thanks so much for having us today. And I'm going to pass it over to Lee Joyce.
Thanks, Julie. My name is Lee Joyce. I am a proud graduate of the class of 1994. I work in the admission office. This is kind of a round 2 for my career. I did this back in the mid-90s under Don Healy. After raising 4 children, I've come back to work for the admission office now as a senior assistant director. And I'm going to pass it off to Tricia.
Hi, thank you, Lee. My name is Tricia Brunton, and I am also an alum. I'm class of 95. I am the Senior Associate Director of Financial Aid at St. Anselm College. And although I've been here almost 5 years, my entire career has been in higher ed.
Thank you all for your introductions. I too, like Lee, started in admission and working for Don Healy. So it was a wonderful experience. So it was great to hear Lee bring up Don again today. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Michael and his team, and we will start we have a PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll turn it over for questions and answers. So I turn it over again to Michael, and thank you again, Michael, your team, for joining us this afternoon.
Sure, of course. Thanks for having us. Give it a couple seconds to get this up here. Perfect. So as Father Bennett mentioned today, we're really going to talk about the changing landscape, but also really just the nuts and bolts to the admission and financial aid process and what that looks like currently in the current global pandemic that's going on, and and what we're seeing from visiting campus to what used to be our travel season and visiting high schools and working with families to what the application process looking like, and then really what Tricia and her colleagues are seeing with financial aid as well. But before we do that, we thought it'd be good to start with just a quick review of the class that just came in. We'll move to the next slide to show you just kind of a quick profile of the class of 2024. So class of 2024 is always going to have a special place, I think, in all of our hearts, because as everyone knows, in the middle of our cycle, the world stopped around us, and we had to really pivot in a new way and begin to implement new ideas, new processes in order to make sure students still felt as though they could choose the college of the best fit for them and ultimately enroll as well. So these numbers are final as of our census date, which is 30 days following the first day of classes. And it's great because we did bring in about 530 students, which was over 20 students more than the year before. GPA, both for non-nursing and nursing applicants, did increase slightly. You can see here our average GPA is pretty much just below a 3.4. Test scores are listed here as well. I know, I think it's Julie's going to talk a little bit about that later on, especially knowing that many students haven't been able to take the test this year and what that means moving forward. Same with SATs and ACT pretty much remain the same or did increase slightly. So we have a very talented, academically talented and smart class with us right now. We did end up slightly more female than male, as we always do. And I think that's in part because our nursing programs does tend to attract more females. But that is pretty consistent. That 60-40 area is pretty much where we've been the last few years. Resident and commuter, that's an interesting one. I think this is one of the first times we've had a 6% commuter population. And I think that's partly due to the pandemic and folks wanting to stay at home. If they were in a commutable distance, that perhaps was safer for them, or perhaps they were concerned, had health risks or things of that sort. So commuting was an option. So we did see an increase in commuter students, but I think, as always, they were able to acclimate pretty well to campus. In terms of diversity, we 10% is right in line with where we had been in the last couple of years. We have a lot of efforts where we're continuing to, do recruitment efforts in a variety of different areas in order to diversify the campus. And again, given the obstacles that were put in front of us, I think, 10% we're pleased with at least being able to meet those numbers of last year. You'll see our top 10 states there. We are still heavily New England based, as always. Mass and New Hampshire tend to be where we see most students coming from. But you can see that we also have California and Texas and New York and New Jersey and other areas on there. And that's by design. We did, prior to the pandemic, we were traveling in those areas. We were recruiting in those areas. So it's nice to see the fruits of our labor in many cases come to fruition and have those students join the college community this fall. And then our top 10 majors are listed there as well. So you'll see that many that perhaps you as an alum were enrolled in. There's a variety of different things that students may be attracted to, but it's really nice to see even just some of those areas of elementary education or secondary ed and some of those areas that have popped into the top 10 majors in the past decade or so. But as always, nursing, business, criminal justice, politics, et cetera, tend to be really strong pulls for the academic area as well. And the other thing that was really exciting, if we go to the next slide, in the midst of all this, we were also able to open our new Welcome Center, which we received very generous donation from the SAVARD family. And this was wonderful. So although we're not able to use the Welcome Center perhaps in the way we originally thought, having this space designated to our office has really been so helpful as we are navigating, visiting campus through the current pandemic. And I know, again, my colleagues are going to talk about what that looks like. It has allowed us to have a space where we can properly social distance, where people can feel comfortable. We have restrooms that are, really just for guest use. And so we're so fortunate that we have this new building, and we're excited for when all of this passes, what we can continue to use it for as well. You'll see there an exterior shot of the building. It is 2 floors. The first floor has, actually, when you walk in, it's actually that photo to the right, the fireplace. It's a beautiful lobby area, welcome space for families. Just beyond that is a presentation room that can hold over 100 guests as needed for large presentations, for general information sessions, or large open houses. We have a couple of interview spaces there on that floor, and then our operations space, which is where a lot of our mailings and paperwork and things of that sort run out of. And then upstairs, we're fortunate that we have a nice conference room for the admissions staff, and then the admissions staff members have private offices to meet with families one-on-one and conduct one-on-one interviews with families or students as well. So it's been a wonderful addition to the campus. It's funny, the architects did such a nice job. It blends in so well with campus that families show up and they say, wow, this is a new building. It looks like it's been here for a long time. And so that's, it reflects the St. Anselm campus vision that much more, which has been really wonderful. So that's a brief update for me. I know my colleagues have a lot of fun information and ideas to share with you. So I'm going to pass it over to Cassie, and she's going to talk a little bit about what travel looks like currently for the admission office. And I say that because it's happening via Zoom mostly. But then she'll also talk a little bit about some tips and tricks to connecting with admission officers on the road.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. All right. So as Michael mentioned, usually this time of year, our staff of, roughly 15 people is spread out all over the country and on the road, visiting 4 to 5 high schools a day and attending college fairs at night. So when we were shut down, we really had to be creative and really thoughtful about how we were going to be a resource for students. And I really believe that's how our office treats this, that really our primary focus is to be a resource to help them find the best fit for them in terms of college, and presenting St. Anselm to them in this capacity really allows them to do that. So we're doing a lot of virtual travel events, and our crew is really, they've done a fantastic job of getting things on their calendar, reaching out to schools, and making themselves available to students. And I think that is one of the silver linings about our situation, is that students right now have more access to us than they've ever had, and maybe will ever have afterwards, once hopefully this thing wraps up soon. So it is a nice thing that we get to have a more personal relationship. And I think that's something we already had done pretty well. So right now we have over 1,000 virtual travel events, and you can see the breakdown. Our virtual interviews are really conversations. They're optional for students, conversations for us to kind of get to know the student and for them to lift themselves off the paper. Each one of our staff members does interviews, and we've just started students having those conversations as well with prospective students. We do group virtual visits. I guess I should speak first about our high school virtual visits. We'll sign up to meet with individual high schools, and students can tune in. So we'll talk about the application process and St. A's in the context of their high school. And then for students who maybe their school doesn't have the resources to host these events, we host general group visits as well. And then we also have been attending virtual college fairs, which have seen a lot of numbers. So I think we're really working hard to make sure that we're a helpful resource to students to finding out more about St. A's. And then we also, as Michael mentioned, are doing on-campus events as well. We offer tours 7 days a week, and that schedule might be abridged soon to a little bit fewer. Virtual interviews 7 days a week. And then this past week, or the last week in October, we did a virtual open house. So we had faculty members, student life coordinators, students themselves really speaking about the Anselmian experience. I think there's no substitute for being on campus at St. A's, as I really don't have to make that argument for alumni. But I think we've done a fantastic job of offering a variety of options at different times of day and in different venues. So again, we're really, I think, doing a great job to be a resource to these students who need extra help navigating this year. If you could move to the next slide, that would be great. So hopefully when we're meeting with students, it's not just getting in front of them and talking about St. A's, but really helping it be a productive meeting. I will say that a lot of schools track demonstrated interest. So meeting us on the road helps us to understand students' level of interest. And it really helps us get to know those students and lift their name off of the paper. I think that it's an important piece to the puzzle in terms of recruitment, and especially at a small school like St. A's, where we care so much about our community. So understanding what kind of community member is coming is an important piece to the puzzle. So when we meet students on the road physically or virtually this year, we ask that people fill out inquiry cards or registrations. That will kind of be the check mark that you've demonstrated interest by attending that event. Interviews, I think, can be really helpful because we can read in a recommendation letter or through a transcript who a student is. But this is really an opportunity for them to voice who they are from the inside out. And what better way to get to know a student than really sitting down and having that virtual cup of coffee date with them and really getting to know them much better. And then it's also important to know that when we're reviewing applications, a lot of schools, and our schools included in this, we'll read applications by territory. So my territory, for example, is Southern New Hampshire. So I will read those applications. So getting to know the students, putting the faces to names, getting to really understand who they are is important because it helps me not only, give a more authentic decision, but in the context of their school and their environment, it helps me make the best informed decision in their admissibility for St. A's. That's it.
Thanks, Cassie. We can have the next slide, please. There we go. So hi, everybody. I'll talk a little bit about the application process and what that looks like. We have 2 applications for students. So we, like many other schools, use the common application. And also for the first time this year, we have our own St. Anselm application. So students actually have the choice. Both collect the same information, but the common application is used at other institutions. St. Anselm application is unique to our own school. We do have a few dates and deadlines to kind of keep in mind, and this is a great conversation to have with your child just about what schools they're looking at and kind of where the application deadlines fall. So we have an early action deadline, which is a non-binding early action plan. That's a November 15th deadline, so that is coming right up. We also have an early decision plan, which is a binding decision. So basically saying that St. A's is my number 1. If I get in, I'm going, no questions asked. So that's a December 1st deadline. And then we also have a regular decision option for students, which is February 1st. That is also a non-binding plan. So really the conversation to have with your child is what application plan makes the most sense for their application, for the schools that they're looking at, and what the schools are offering and where that school falls on their list. So an important conversation to have. Test scores are a really unique situation this year. We have traditionally required test scores for nursing applications, and we're test optional for all other programs. So with that being said, due to all of the issues surrounding COVID and lack of options for students to be able to actually take the SAT and ACT, we are test optional for all programs this year. So students do not have to submit their test scores. If they have questions about submitting their scores and they'd like to know if if they should or should not, or if they have concerns that they weren't able to submit them, they can contact us and we'll talk with them through that process. But for this year, we are test optional for all of our programs. Supporting documents, so those are essentially all of the other documents that come in along with the application. I think something to note about our application deadlines is that we're an application only deadline school. So that essentially means that the student just needs to submit that application by those deadlines that I just spoke about. The supporting documents can come in shortly after. And once all the supporting documents are received, the application is then considered complete and we can begin the review process. So first piece, recommendation letters. So we do require teacher and school counselor recommendation letter. So those are conversations to have with your child and also the school counselor about, who they would like to have submit the letters. And all of those are submitted to our office electronically, so directly from the recommender. We also are very unique in that we invite parents to write a letter on their son or daughter's behalf. So they may actually, tell us a little bit about their child, what makes them unique or special, or what's something that maybe you think we should know about your child that somebody else might not share with us or the student might not share with us. So that's completely optional. It does not impact the admission decision, but it is an option for parents if they want to be involved in their process, in the application process in a unique way. Involvement in extracurricular involvement, that would also include things like part-time employment or maybe family obligations and responsibilities, community service, all of those things that we learn about the student and get to see, sort of what they're involved with outside of the classroom. So that information is submitted on the Common Application or the St. Anselm application. And unique this year would be a section that is part of the Common Application, and it's basically a COVID-19 section that a student can basically elect to submit information to us about maybe ways that they were impacted, maybe ways, whether that's through educational things that changed, maybe the grading system changed at their high school and they had concerns, maybe they had to change their curriculum, had issues with Wi-Fi connections at home, and then maybe, maybe COVID-19 hit their family in a very different way, and is something that they think is important or maybe would impact other parts of their application. So that's completely optional, and that is part of the application that students can choose to fill out when they submit. And then the essay, the oh so important essay. The essay is part of the Common Application and the St. Anselm application. And I'm not going to get into too much detail because I'm going to pass it to my colleague Lee in a moment, and she's going to share some tips and tricks as it relates to the essay. But my one tip for you with the application process is to talk with your child about the applicant status portal. So they received information shortly after they apply about a way that they can log in and actually view all of the documents and the required documents that are specific to the application, but also to financial aid. And that's a way for them to log in and to know that everything has been received. So they'll get information about that in their email, so they definitely have to check that. But it is a great tip for just kind of staying on top of things and being able to check in with them. And if, like my other colleagues have said, if there are any questions or concerns about the application, or they think something was submitted, but it's not showing up on the checklist when they log into their portal, just give us a call, send us an email. We're happy to help. That's what we do. So we're happy to do that, and don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I say the same for parents as well. So with that, I will pass it over to Lee.
Thanks, Julie. One of the best parts about being a college admission counselor is that we get to work with 17 and 18-year-old people, and they are very sharp and pretty savvy as young adults. And one of the most common questions we get asked is, how important is the essay as part of the application? And I think part of it is their students are trying to judge what piece of the pie does this count towards for when an application gets read? And what I try to explain to students is I frame it as an analogy. Your essay is, you can't submit a photograph of yourself when you apply to college, but you can certainly tell a story about yourself. And you can certainly tell a story, if you were going to pick a story to tell about yourself or pick a photograph, you probably wouldn't pick your yearbook photograph, or you're a little bit stiff, with the traditional background. A better photograph and a better an expression of yourself would probably be maybe a photograph from your cell phone with your friends or with your family on vacation. And that's essentially what an essay, a personal essay on a college application should be. It should tell a story so that when the application reader goes to make a decision, in so many ways, that essay has put the reader in a certain frame of mind. I think that the goal of an essay should be that the application reader likes the student who's applying to the college. Essentially, at the end of the day, I also think that it shows the application reader that the student is capable of writing and coming to college as a freshman and writing within the first year writing course. So when I share with students my ideas and some tips and tricks about how to write a good essay, I say, okay, well, imagine you have to read 25 to 40 college applications in a day. And it's a lot of number crunching for me as a reader. I look at a lot of grades and classes and numbers. So to me, the essay is the most delightful part of reading an application. And I find it engaging and entertaining. Within the office, we always are sharing stories about wonderful essays that we've read. Before we even got online with you folks this afternoon, my colleague Cassie was saying that she had just read a college essay that had brought her to happy tears. That's a wonderful thing for a college essay to do. So I always say, tell a good story. It doesn't have to be a lesson learned. It doesn't have to have a moral to it. It just has to share a little slice of your life with the reader. And the best place to draw those ideas from, sometimes opening up a family photo album can bring back good memories. And oh, that's right, I can share this story that gives a little bit of insight into my character. It's amazing what an essay can tell you about a student without even sometimes a student meaning it, but you can feel that the love a student has for their family or for their siblings, or the respect or the gratitude they feel for the teachers in their lives. We hear lots of essays about love for grandparents, and those are wonderful things to learn about a student. So the essay is an important part of the application process, and ideally it's one which is a good story about somebody. So that's my tips and tricks for college essay writing. We're going to get a little bit more serious with some financial aid information from Tricia.
Thanks, Lee. So I'm going to talk about just financial aid in general. It's very nuanced. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or any other members of my team, and we'll gladly help you. So first of all, what is financial aid? Financial aid is any funding received that helps a student pay for college. This includes merit, need-based aid, as well as loans and work programs. So basically, it encompasses a lot of different things, some of which the school has discretion in giving out, and some that are mandated by state or federal government. At St. A's, some examples of need-based financial aid that we give out are federal Pell Grants, federal SEOG grants, the New Hampshire Governor's Scholarship, and St. Anselm grants. We also give out a fair amount of merit-based aid. People may see those on their letters as Chancellor Scholarship or President's Scholarship. And then some non-need-based funds that we give out that are in the forms of grants are RA grants, legacy awards, which are designed for the children of alumni, and family grants, which are for families that have 2 or more siblings enrolled at St. Anselm at the same time. For work programs, we partake in the Federal Work Study Program, which basically a student gets a job on campus or off campus at a community service organization, and they normally work between 5 to 8 hours per week. and earn a paycheck every 2 weeks for the work that they've done. And then finally, some of the loan programs are the federal subsidized direct loan program, which interest doesn't accrue while the student's in school. The unsubsidized program, where interest accrues while the student's in school, as well as alternative loan programs for either parents or for students. And I think next slide. To apply for financial aid, you need to complete the FAFSA form. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, and it's not as intimidating as people think. Basically, the FAFSA collects income information for both the student and the parent. There's a student section and a parent section, as well as asset information, and it also looks at the household size of the family and the number of children that are in school. With this information, an expected family contribution is calculated, which is often called the EFC. So everyone that fills out a FAFSA will get an EFC. And this EFC basically measures the family's financial strength. So another form that a lot of schools use, these are private schools generally that use this form, and St. Anselm is one of them, is the CSS profile form. So to apply for financial aid at St. A's, you need to submit the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and then any other information we may require, as well as other schools will also have their own information that they require. Some schools have their own financial aid applications. Some will ask for tax information, verification of assets, proof of citizenship. Those are all different types of information that could be asked. So make sure you, at St. A's, you can check on the applicant portal that Julie referenced, and check with the school, because you may need to submit documentation at one school that another school doesn't require. And so this is just a little more information about the FAFSA form. You need to complete it every year. It uses prior tax data. So for 2021-22 applicants, it will be based on the student and parent 2019 tax information. And as I said before, this is used to determine a student's financial need. And it can be completed October 1st, prior to the year that the student's going to enroll. So you can complete the FAFSA form now if you haven't already, or any time up until the school's deadline. And the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution from the FAFSA equals the financial need, and that's what the school will use to determine financial aid awards. And the next slide, I think, has a calculation. Yep. So basically, this is a real St. A's number for this current year for a student who is living on campus. The cost of attendance is $62,244. It includes direct costs of $57,960, which is $42,840 in tuition and fees, and then $15,120 in room and board. These are direct costs because they're billable by the school. They're what the school charges. And then there's also indirect costs that we have an allowance of $4,284. This includes things that the student likely incurs as expenses, but would not be charged directly by the school, such as transportation to and from home, personal expenses, and books and supplies. So for this student, there's an EFC, an expected family contribution of $33,786. So this is a real number, and in this case, this is a 4-member household with the student is the only one in college, and the parent's income is $148,000. So just to give you an idea of what income, where an EFC is once you see a student and family's income. So the financial need for this student, you take the cost of attendance, $62,244, and subtract out the EFC of $33,786. So this student has a financial need of $28,458. This means she can receive need-based aid up to that amount of money. All right, I think the next slide. So this is just a little information about a few facts about financial aid at St. Anselm College. So for 2021, we gave out merit scholarships that range from $16,000 to $27,000 per student. And also, I used a 1920 statistic for the next fact because that year's completed. We had 513 students earn money through the Federal Work Study Program. And 99% of the students in 1920 received some form of grant aid. So clearly, most students receive, you should apply for financial aid. Most students do receive some financial aid. And the next slide, please. So a lot of people ask us whether it's worth their time to apply for outside scholarships, and it definitely is. Outside scholarships are funds available usually through local organizations, and they can help meet the gap of your unmet need after you receive your financial aid. So many local agencies have funds available, and oftentimes high school guidance counselors are a good resource for this information. If we do find out about any outside scholarships, we do publish that information, but oftentimes it's high school guidance offices. And also, if your child applies for a Dollars for Scholars scholarship and happens to get that, St. Anselm is a matching school for Dollars for Scholars, so we will match up to $1,000 in that outside scholarship that the student gets. And in 1920, we had 296 students at St. Anselm receive, and I can't see the number, it was over $780,000 in outside scholarships. So there's a lot of money out there if you put forth the effort to try and find it. And the next. So this, I just want to refer you to this website on our website. And there's a link to this green book, Making the St. Anselm Experience Possible. It's a really good resource. It has everything you want to know about financial aid at St. A's. And as I said, if you still have questions, reach out to me or any other members of my team, and we're happy to help you, even if your child isn't interested in St. Anselm. If you just have general questions or you have specific questions about another school, we'll point you in the right direction as best we can.
Great. Thank you to all of our panelists. I think there was a lot of great information we were able to hear, and I'm so grateful that they shared their experiences and their expertise in helping us all understand the changing landscape of the process of really admission and financial aid. We've got some great questions from our participants. I'm going to just open it up with one that said, someone wants to know, do you think virtual recruitment, virtual programming is here to stay even after we get to the other side of COVID-19? Or how will COVID-19 change our work going forward?
Go ahead, Cassie.
I think this is a really good question, and I hope that we'll continue a lot of the efforts that we have made virtually. First of all, our virtual tour on campus is really fantastic. You can not only look at videos and pictures, but also if you follow the map, you can go through the different parts of campus, press play, and one of our current students will talk about what happens in that building, what sorts of events, and what student life does in that particular building. So I think that is something that students should be able to access even when they can come to campus in great numbers and we can visit them in person. I think we'll still offer probably some virtual interviews and information sessions. So I think it'll be a nice blend of both in-person and virtual options. We've really been able to visit some schools that we maybe wouldn't have when we were in a car or getting on a plane. While we did recruit in, California, Texas, and the Mid-Atlantic, time was limited because we had to be other places and we had other responsibilities. So this has allowed us to reach out to schools that we haven't been a part of before. I met with a school on Friday from Pittsburgh and did a college fair of a school in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago. So I hope that we'll keep some of it and hopefully very soon be on the path to meeting people in person. It's one of the best parts of our job to get to interact with these students. So it is something we miss doing in person, but I think we'll be able to continue some of the great progress that we've done virtually.
I just have a follow-up. Can you talk about your experience about participating in virtual college fairs? I think the days of going through high school gyms with your all your equipment, if you will, boxes of literature and things, obviously a little bit different in the virtual world. So can you tell us about your thoughts or your reactions and experience to the virtual college fairs? How does it look?
I can take that one again. It's really different. It feels different. We certainly don't get a free dinner when we do them, which we sometimes do on the road. Some virtual fairs are a little better than others, but I recently went to one. It was very successful. The high school had set up, 10 different Zoom rooms for the 10 different schools that were attending. And then the students just went to each room for 15 minutes and chatted with each of us. And so we got to meet, a myriad of students, sometimes even more than we would if we were just standing at a table in a high school gym. So there are some that are better than others, but those to me have been the most successful, where the students kind of doing a round robin of all the schools in attendance. And it gives us a little bit more, a little bit more time with the students as well. Because when you're at a high school college fair in person, I think the students feel like they have to get to the next table, and we feel like we have to get to the back of the line. So there have been some enhancements in doing it that way.
Excellent. Thanks, Cassie. One of our participants on our call today was concerned or interested in how you are going to handle applicants whose senior year career was somewhat disjointed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Sports could not necessarily be played, plays could not be put on. How are you working to address those, I would say deficiencies of no fault of their own to the student, but the pandemic threw a wrench in the works, and how are you responding to that?
I can take that one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So-
Julie.
Yeah, so I think the first thing for families to remember and for students to understand, everyone went through the pandemic. It was not isolated to one specific state or area. So every applicant we're seeing will have some of those impacts to their application. Their involvement may have dropped off significantly because they did not play baseball or were not in the play. So we're going to see that from all different applicants. So it's not going to be unique to that student. It will not be anything that we're not used to seeing. And we will not hold it against a student. It's something that is completely out of their control, and we would not let it negatively impact an applicant whatsoever, because it is completely out of their control. I would say that really at this point, if they want to stand out or maybe share again how those things impacted them and the changes that they experienced with COVID, connect with us. Schedule one of those interviews, give us a call, send us an email, share your story with us. Sometimes it feels better to just say, I explained it, now they know, and they have all the information they can. Obviously, I did mention that there is a COVID section on the application where students can, share some of that information and how it may have impacted them. And I would say if they're comfortable with it, they should use that section, absolutely. But again, we're here to talk with them. We're here to listen to their stories and, what changes happened to their application. And we will not let anything like that impact them. And that would be the same for a change in grading. We're seeing a lot of, pass fail that's happening. We're seeing some unique grading systems, students who've maybe had to change their their course load or drop a class because of the impacts and maybe being remote or hybrid or in person. So again, we understand that those things are happening, and it would not be anything that would negatively impact the student because it was just completely out of their control.
That's great. And kind of a follow-up to that, Julie or to anyone on the team, when you're looking and reviewing candidates, do you have a balancing act you have to do between the academic program, their extracurricular program, their work life? How do you keep that balance in check, or how do you work that balance?
Sure. I'll pass it to Michael. Michael, they've
Sure.
heard enough from me.
Sure. So, no, I think that's a great question. I think, we really do try to, we try our best to do a holistic review as much as possible. And as much as a student, yes, academics are definitely the most important, and we're looking at the transcript, really focus on that. We're also looking at all of those other documents that Julie mentioned, the recommendation letters, essay in Lee's case, where we get to learn a little bit more about the student. And what we try to do through the process is identify students that we think are potentially Anselmians and really fit, what we're looking for, be academically successful, but also contribute to the community. And what we also do through the process is make some notes so that if that student does enroll, we want to make sure they have the tools they need to be successful. So if it means as simple as, maybe recommending, someone in the ARC to work with them, or perhaps, perhaps there's just been some difficulty at home or things like that. We want to make sure that when students move to college and they are somewhat on their own, that they do still have a safety net, and that we're a family, that we're taking care of them. And so that's really what we're doing through the process to make sure that we're admitting students that are a good fit, but then also that those students can be successful once they're on campus.
You talk a lot about process, and I think there's a process for the applicant and also for the institution. There's a recruitment cycle. We hopefully move to yield, and then to retention. And so one of our participants was asking about how do you try to offer admission to people you think will stay at St. Anselm? How does that notion of retention play into any of the decision making?
Sure, I think that's
maybe the question of fit is
Sure.
appropriate there.
Academically, number one, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at GPA, where we actually recalculate GPAs like many schools do as well, but we put everyone on a 4.0 scale. We look solely at their core academic classes to make sure that they can academically be successful. And then on top of that, we look at all of those different forms and letters and all of that, and try to gather a bit more information about the student. And then I think in terms of retaining them, it's making sure they have a good experience. Something we did this summer, was just making sure students continued to feel comfortable with the college decision. And then I know that the orientation group did a lot of work too, to make sure that students were in fact getting oriented to campus and felt at home and comfortable, even in the current COVID times, and what that looks like. So I think, in terms of retention and students, looking for students that will ultimately stay and graduate from the college, it's a long process. And it starts from when they first visit campus and make sure they feel comfortable, all the way through, making sure that they continue to return each year on top of that.
Thank you. What are you hearing? What's on people's minds when they come to the office or when they meet with you virtually? What's changing as people try to students and parents, families? What's the questions in 2020?
Lee, you want to take that one?
Almost every day, I talk to parents and students who are very anxious that they weren't able to take the SAT or the ACT. That seems to be at the top of everybody's mind. I think everybody traditionally associates college admission with the SAT, or for New Englanders, or the ACT. And students on their applications or in person are saying, I signed up 4 times and it was canceled 4 times and I don't have a test score to submit. And how is that going to affect my application? That there seems to be a fair amount of stress about that. Happily, St. Anselm has been test optional. And we've gone test optional for St. A's for nursing. And so our office is very comfortable reading applications without standardized test scores. And again, all families have experienced this. And you can't hold a student accountable for what they have no control over. That's just not fair. And so that's what we've been saying. Like, please, like you can only be responsible for what you have control over. And so that's been the message we've been sharing.
Great, thank you. How can alumni help in the process? How can we support you, alumni support the process and the recruitment of qualified students to St. Anselm?
An excellent question. I'm sure we all might even have something to add here. I'll name off a couple of things, and then if colleagues want to jump in. There's so much, really just spreading the word about St. A's. First of all, whatever you can do, if you have a neighbor, a cousin, a family member that is considering, looking at certain colleges or even certain programs at certain colleges, and St. Anselm may be of a good fit for them, recommend it. A few weeks ago, everyone should have received an email, both current parents and alumni, that said, if you have a student that you'd like to recommend, you can fill out this form and we'll make sure that we waive their application fee, which has been really, I think, helpful, breaks down some barriers, make sure students can, if they want to be considered, that the application fee doesn't have to hold them back. So if you want to fill that out, recommend it. Again, share it with folks that even you think might be of a good fit. If you have if you're still in touch with your college roommates or your college friends, bring it up in your next conversation and mention it. That's great as well. We also have our alumni volunteer network that you can look at. It's very different. So typically, we'd invite you to come to college fairs with us or cover a college fair with us or host an event. Obviously, right now, this has been put on hold. I know that we are really putting our, getting creative and putting our thinking caps on for the spring. So we would love to potentially have some alumni part of some virtual programming that we have going on. I know we're always looking to talk about the St. Anselm story and where it's led our graduates. And so having you even just be in touch with us and tell us, here's where I am now, here's what I do. I recommend St. Anselm graduates to my supervisor or whoever all the time. Things like that are always huge for us. And then once we're through this pandemic, the hope is that we will return to having you help us cover some college fairs, whether it's in New England or you live across the country. Those are all things that help us spread the word. And so I know that the AVN program will continue to offer some great chances to get involved. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? Those are the three things that I could think of.
Yeah, Cassie.
I was just going to mention also that we have a book award. So alumni can sponsor that award, and it's given out to high school students who really kind of fit that criteria of being an Anselmian, focusing on scholarly work, but really they're a great force for good within their community. And we oftentimes will give that to juniors. So it's kind of starting the process early, getting the word out early. And we hope that those students will then apply to St. A's because they've already been really celebrated for the ways in which they are an Anselmian already. And that's a great help as well.
And related to alumni help, you talk about a lot about networks. It seems that we're very connected virtually now, and I think technology is a great the great network bringer together, if for lack of a better phrase. How do you network and work with the high school communities in this new environment?
I can jump in there. we have a lot of great connections with school counselors and high schools. So we all have different territories where we travel and spend our time traditionally in the fall. Although that is taking place in a virtual world, we still have a lot of contact with high school counselors, and they're a big kind of our advocates and be able to help us to help educate the students and walk them through the process and things like that. So we work really hard to form those relationships to make sure that we're really transparent with them. So if we have updates to our application process, or if we know that they have some students where the application fee might be a barrier for them, that we communicate with them and allow for them to be able to help students with any of those barriers that may come up. So we have a lot of our good friends and colleagues on the road that are school counselors. Many of them are very close with us. And again, those relationships are really important to what we do. And it's a really good thing for if your student has not spoken with their school counselor, I would tell them to do that. They can help walk you through the, what their recommendation letter will look like and what they would like to have included in their letter. They can talk about, what teachers should submit recommendation letters if they want. What should go into the application and that kind of thing. And they also are probably very familiar with us. So they too can provide a lot of insight as to, what they should or should not include in an application. So they are very good friends of ours, and we work really hard to form those relationships with high schools and school counselors.
Are you hearing anything from your colleagues in the high schools, in the college guidance offices, or the developmental counseling about what students are going through? What are they hearing at the high schools? We hear a lot about anxiety and uncertainty. And what are you hearing from the high school communities?
I'll start, but then I think probably I should pass it to Lee and Cassie too. I know they've been talking a lot with school counselors during their visits, but it's hard. Students this is really hard. As hard as it is on all of us as adults, it's very hard on these students, and every student is impacted by COVID and the pandemic in a different way. So they're working really hard to support their students emotionally. But also that, applying for college, that hasn't stopped either. There is still a timeline for them, but we are working closely with them to be able to support the students. Is there a reason that maybe their application won't make it in by the deadline? Can we work with the student and the school counselor to ensure that we can help support them so that they can still apply and all of that? Students are applying later this year. I have heard that directly from school counselors. The college lists are just starting to form. So if you're listening and you're thinking, I think my child is behind, probably they're pretty much the same. I would say that they still have to plug along and work on it. And it's kind of nice to feel like there's some normalcy, I think, in life too. But school counselors have said that they're just doing everything they can to help keep students focused, keep them on track, but to really just stay connected with us. And their advice too for a lot of students would be to connect with the colleges they're looking to apply to, have those conversations. Are there concerns or questions that they have, and just maintain constant communication, because we're here to support them. I don't know if Lee or Cassie, if you want to add anything. I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
Go ahead, Lee.
It's just a tough year. It's just a tough year. I think, even aside from the college application, I have some high school students at home as a mom, and the loss of the little things in life that actually bring a connection points, the loss of sports and clubs, it's just tough. So, and everybody's doing their best. And I always think, well, the silver lining is that if you can muscle through 2020, the next time you're confronted with a challenge, perhaps you have the muscle in place to, if I did that, then I can now overcome this difficult circumstance. But they're having a tough time.
Cassie.
I would just add that I'm so grateful for those professionals. I have educators in my family. I know Lee does as well. And they're just working tirelessly to support these students. And a lot of schools, the guidance counselor for social and emotional help is also helping these students find a college, which Julie mentioned. It's very rare that a school will separate those two things. So I think they're really focused on helping their students emotionally, socially, academically get through this year. And so we're just doing the best we can to not add to their plate, but to effectively and productively help them out and help the students out as well. But I'll echo my colleague's sentiments that it's just a hard year overall.
Well, thank you. I'm so grateful for all of you who took the time to join us this afternoon. And in particular, so much thanks to our colleagues in admission and financial aid. We are so grateful for the work that you do on behalf of St. Anselm College, day in and day out. It was, I think, a great conversation. And we're, as our panelists have said, we're here. If you have additional questions, we can help anybody navigate the changing landscape of higher education, application, financial aid. We're here to help. So again, thank you to our panelists, Michael and Cassie, Julie, Lee, and Tricia, and to thank you all for taking the time to join us this afternoon. This our presentation was recorded and will be on our website shortly. So thank you all again, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.